One of the most important elements of any photo adventure is being prepared. It isn't just about scouting locations and doing your research, but also taking advantage of new technology, learning how to deal with the weather, and certainly choosing the right gear. So how would you prepare for an adventure above the Arctic Circle to the Lofoten Islands of Norway?
Currently in Rena, and Colby and I was expecting a better sunrise. It didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. One thing I've been learning about Norway is the weather is ever changing.
For 7 years I've been traveling up here, spending a lot of time above the Arctic Circle to learn all about the different locations, to learn how the weather operates, to kind of put all those pieces together to give me a higher probability of coming away with great images every time I come here.
It's so crazy. Like, how many times have you traveled here in 7 years?
I think it's been around 12 times.
So you know, like, basically these parts inside and out.
Yeah, I know each of the different fjords. I know with certain types of light where I want to go.
So it's kind of like my backyard in Laguna Beach. I know that place inside and out, as well as Joshua Tree National Park and Death Valley. I've been there so many times, and I've kind of like hyper-focused on a few spots, and I've learned where the sun is rising and setting throughout the year. And out here in Norway, it's my first time. I don't know, but I'm with Colby, and he knows.
But the reality is that not everyone has that opportunity to travel to a place like the Lofoten Islands for 7 years and 12 different trips. So Stan, this is a great question for yourself. Being the first time that you're visiting here, how do you prepare for a location you haven't actually photographed before? How do you know what you want to see?
I would have to say Instagram is my favorite. Instagram is probably one of the best resources.
Agreed.
Being here for my very first time, you get that anxiety of like, where do I go? What do I see? And I'm out here for 7 days, but you got to pick and kind of choose where you want to go.
Absolutely,
right?
You got to be strategic, right?
Exactly. So yeah, Instagram is a great resource for locating photos that you want to shoot.
Absolutely.
And I particularly love seascapes.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I was looking up places like Rena that we were staying, and Mordsund, and some other beaches.
And then at the same time, you have that recents tab in the search. So
yes.
Tell them about the recents tab.
So what's really cool is, you can pretty much tell up to date what's going on, because, people post a lot. They want to share their photos, right?
Absolutely.
People have some amazing photos they want to share. So you'll know, what you're heading into.
Like real-time access information of like what someone posted this morning
Exactly.
or yesterday. But a lot of tourists out there are still using Instagram itself, and they're taking cell phone snaps, and those snaps are generally much more accurate for what you can expect in real time. So for like Stan arriving here in Lofoten for the first time, he can do that search for Lofoten, look up recent tab, and see what people were sharing just a few days before. So if there was a storm that came in and completely changed things, he has a better idea of what to expect going into a new situation.
Yeah, and especially up here in the Arctic, the weather's, it just changes like every minute.
The weather is always changing.
Yeah, so you can actually say like, we're in the south and you want to go north.
Absolutely.
And you can find out if the weather is better up there or not. It's almost as good as checking the weather.
So when it comes to preparing for these different locations and visiting these new places or places that you've been before, a lot of mobile technology has helped make our lives a lot easier as content creators, no matter if we're photographing still images or video work like Stan's doing out here. Now, for the last few days that we've been out here, Stan, I've been seeing you use a couple different mobile apps in very unique and creative ways to kind of prepare you to create some pretty amazing both time lapses and images. Why don't you let them know what you were using?
Two of my favorite apps is PHOTOPILLS and STELLARIUM. And we were in Mordsund, right?
Yep.
And it was really cool being up in Arctic because obviously the stars are higher, like the constellations are in different spots of the sky. And I was noticing the first night was a pretty clear night, and I seen Orion coming up above the horizon, kind of like southeast to west, and it would set, and it was standing tall. So what was really cool was there's this road that it's kind of an open road, kind of right by the office building where the cabins were staying. And I was looking at it, I was like, and it was during the day.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, you know what? I bet Orion will pass right through this, and because it's standing tall on its feet, it'll come right through that roadway.
A little gap right there.
Exactly. So what I did was, in broad daylight, it's called Night AR. It's augmented reality. I pointed it at the street, so you can actually see the road, right? Going up the hill, and I can scroll through time, basically.
So you're telling me that it's like overlaying over what you're seeing through the camera?
Yeah, so it doesn't show the stars and constellations and such, but it does show the Milky Way. So I know where Orion sits relative to the outside of the Milky Way. It sits right under it. So I knew that Orion would be bang right in the middle at around like 9:30. between that road. And I was like, this would be an epic spot for an astral portrait, right? So then I cross-referenced that app with Stellarium, which shows you all the constellations, the stars, and sure enough, Orion was sitting right there. So me and my buddy, we're hoping, crossing our fingers for clear skies, and we got it. Clear enough, at least.
Yeah.
So, and we got a couple bangers. So those two apps, help me pre-plan, these concepts.
Yeah, well, you can anticipate the idea of what might, what opportunities might occur. And I think that's a really important thing for all you guys watching.
But then there's weather. And then I've been seeing you use a handful of weather apps, probably like one or two of them, and you're always on there, and you're like cross-referencing them a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we talked a little bit about the weather being crazy, earlier in this video, but the reality is that weather is unique around the world. And so here in Norway, for example, I use two different weather apps because I find that they work close in hand with the Norwegian weather services to give me the most accurate information. Now, the first app is called YR. It's actually a Norwegian app. And so they do a really good job of local and regional weather, so I can check kind of cloud cover, get an idea of where there might be sun breaks, things like that. And of course, for things like rain or snow, it gives me a heads up of what's coming. Now, in addition, there's another app called KLARA that I also find does a really good job, and it displays things like graphs and other charts really beautifully to give me a visual representation of what might happen. And so when I take both of those apps together and combine them, I can have a better accurate take at what a scene might look like, or what opportunities Stan and I might have tonight, for example, if we wanted to go check out a specific location. Not all weather apps are the same, and not all services are the same when it comes to weather.
They definitely do not, because people in the States, they look at other apps and they're like, oh, you're gonna get clear skies, or it's gonna be cloudy. I'm like, nope. You're looking at the wrong apps, buddy.
Yeah, it doesn't work out.
And I've learned that, just hanging out with Colby here, and anywhere around the world you go, you're gonna find those localized apps, like you said, more hyper-focused to that location.
Now, it's really interesting, talking about weather and talking about dealing with bad weather, that's a really fun segment to kind of jump in and talk about trip planning. So Stan, how do you plan for a trip if you're going to a location like the Lofoten Islands, knowing that the weather is going to be crazy, and knowing that you want to photograph, certain things, but that you don't know how the weather is going to be?
For pre-planning, you have to account from where you're coming from, because you lose a day.
Yeah, you get travel days.
You have travel days, right? So I remember like the first time I went to Iceland, we planned it for 7 days, but you lose 2 days.
Yep.
Add a few days to your trip, right? Because a lot can happen. Say if you came out here for 7 days, you've already lost 2 days, and now you're stuck 3 days of bad weather, and now you only got 2 days to shoot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then that day you leave, and it's happened to me, that's when the Northern Lights pop. Add a few more extra days to your trip. Trust me on this.
I remember conversations both you and I had where you're like, is 5 extra days after our main part of the trip worthwhile? And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah, because tomorrow is going to be the night. So that goes to show, if we came back a day early,
we would have missed the good light.
We would have missed the good light and the Northern Lights, because there's another KP4 expected tomorrow night.
If we're lucky.
If we're lucky. It's Norway.
Now, inside that same vein of talking about the number of days you take on a trip, when it comes to where you want to focus your attention, of course, we're trying to pay attention to weather, we're looking for the good light, but how do you strategically put together either an itinerary or maybe a shot list of what you want to photograph? Because you come to a place like Lofoten, you haven't been here before, it's easy to feel like a kid in a candy store, where you just want to photograph everything all the time. But that doesn't always work out well, does it?
No, it doesn't. If you're hyper-focused on one spot, you can go back to those spots in the morning, in the afternoon, and not have so much pressure and anxiety like, oh, I need to go travel 2 hours that way, and you're missing the light. And there's a lot of examples. I'll say my last trip to Iceland, I was in Skovas, and the light was amazing all day, but then you trick yourself, oh, Glacier Lagoon is probably going to be way better, and that's 2.5, what is that, 2.5 hours?
2.5 hours.
And then guess what? We get there, and it was bad. And I had other people telling me, oh man, are you still at Skovas? It's firing right now. The light is so epic. There's rainbows. And we're here at Glacier Lagoon just sucking our thumbs.
Yep. I think you hit the nail on the head. You certainly need a bit of luck, because again, you can't control weather. Yes. But you need to be prepared, and you need to be in the right location at the right time. And as you were just saying, the reality is that if you're trying to hit everything and see everything you possibly can in a given region, you're going to have a lot of opportunity costs that are going to be the cost, the payment for traveling around through all that time, instead of concentrating on a very specific region.
It's not going to happen.
And focusing your attention there so that you can revisit locations multiple times with different lights, so that you have that higher chance to get that amazing light, because it's very rare that you show up to a location for the first time
and get lucky.
And you get lucky.
Yeah.
And everything works out and you get this beautiful sunset or sunrise or you know, waves for seascapes or northern lights. Sometimes, you know, even if you can't visit a location more than once, you want to concentrate your area on where you think is the most possible or most probable for you to have the better results. And oftentimes that means to, you know, not spread yourself too thin.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
So part of being prepared for a trip is bringing the right gear. So to start things off, Stan, what gear did you bring to shoot both stills and video out here in Norway?
My favorite video lens, I would say, is possibly the 85.
Okay.
So for photos, I bought the 24 G Master. So the two lenses I brought on this trip is the 24 G Master and the Tokina 85.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. And what camera bodies are you using?
I have the A7 III and the A7R III. The A7 III was great in low light. That's basically an A7S, kind of, but not really. But it was amazing for the Northern Lights stuff we captured with you in your workshop.
Absolutely.
I would say the R3 is my main go-to. It's pretty decent in low light, but you got the megapixels for the photos.
Yeah.
You know, and I really care about the photos. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, you know, I'm a photographer first, and I love video, but it's like that megapixels. You know, I know you have the R4.
Yeah. So I brought a pair of A7 R4s because I like to have two different bodies. Of course, I mean, I think most of the time when you visit, especially a crazy location like this, with weather being, you know, something that you can't predict and it's a little bit cold and wet, you want to make sure that in case something happens to one of your bodies, you have a backup. So I have two A7 R4s that I use to, again, maximize megapixels, 62 megapixels to work with. You got great dynamic range, great autofocusing. To me, it's my go-to camera now.
Yeah.
And then I have a variety of different lenses, but I think two of the ones that I'm using the most on this trip, of course, is the 16-35 f2.8 G Master lens. Now that is one of my favorite ultra-wide angle zoom lenses. It's very, very sharp. It's also fast enough to shoot the northern lights and the stars above. It's great for seascapes. It's great for big foreground elements. It's a wonderful, wonderful lens. And then I also brought out the Sony 20mm f1.8 G lens because it's not only super small and it's incredibly fast at f1.8, so it's great for night photography, but it's also incredibly sharp. So you got like corner to corner sharpness even at f1.8. So it's great for those kind of Milky Way shots where you want to make sure that you're not getting coma or any of those other issues that you can have with lower quality lenses.
We also got to include that I did jump on that 20, and I'm actually filming Colby and myself with the 20 right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sometimes I test myself. I'll just go on a trip with one or two lenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you get more creative. You forget about what you could have brought.
Yeah.
Because you just get so focused and locked in with that lens, you know, and then you come back with cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? It's a good lesson, or it's a good, you know, thing to force yourself into to kind of be more creative with lenses that you have. It's also really important to briefly talk about two other really important camera accessories that I think has helped make the images that we've captured out here, and hopefully we will for the next few days, a little bit more incredible. Now, one is a tripod. So tripods are super important, right? So you want a sturdy tripod because
especially
why?
for night.
Why do you want a sturdy tripod?
You're gonna get motion blur.
You're gonna get motion blur. What kind of weather are we dealing with? Have we dealt with over the last few days?
Wind.
It's a lot of wind.
I mean, just for an example, the last few days, there was one day in particular, and seriously, maybe 20 minutes, there was, the sun was totally out, then the rain came, then the snow came, and there was hailing, and then there was like hurricane force winds.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, and it was insane. So if you don't have a stable tripod, I would pick one up.
It's worth an investment. If you're using a tripod that has the very skinny legs, coming to a place like Lofoten, you are going to want something that's a little bit sturdier. It doesn't have to be super heavy. There's a lot of tripods out there that use carbon fiber that are a lot lighter. But you definitely want something that can handle a little bit of wind and certainly the weight of the camera gear that you're using.
That's true.
So filters. So what are the filters that you think are the most valuable out here?
Out here, for sure, polarizer, man. The water's so pretty out here.
Yeah.
You know, and you know that helps to eliminate all the reflection from the top surface of the water, so you can see all like what's happening on the bottom.
For those that don't know what a polarizer does, typically most polarizers are circular polarizers, so they screw onto the front of your camera lens. And then essentially what they do is they either enhance or they cut reflected light.
I always say polarizer is your first filter.
Yep.
You know, and I even noticed it out here like the last couple of days, like even off the hillsides. The contrast you get off of the mountains and the mixed with the snow, it's so pretty.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
Nice, yeah.
But if you have nice cloud cover, nice even light, and you're shooting in a nice kind of perpendicular angle to the sun, you're gonna get some really, really nice use out of either enhancing maybe a reflected sunrise or sunset, or cutting those reflections out and giving you nice clean colors for things such as fjords or other things out there. Now, another filter that I like to talk about out here, which isn't necessarily as pertinent this time of year because we got low light, but can be helpful, is a neutral density. So neutral density is essentially just the darkened filter that allows you to shoot at slower shutter speeds, because slower shutter speeds can look much more pretty, right?
Yeah, it's more creative. And lastly, let's talk about some non-photo related gear, right?
Sounds good to me.
Let's talk about some spikes and the Aquatech weather shield.
Absolutely. Going really any place that has a lot of snow and potentially a lot of ice, especially if you get that temperature dropping below zero, is that you really want to bring a pair of micro spikes. These are slip-on spikes that kind of fit over your boot, that have small little pointed bottoms. They're not like a crampons, they're not nearly as tall or nearly as dangerous, but they are vital to come out to a location like this. You know, you put them on and you walk down even a slushy hill, you have so much more traction. And especially if you start dealing with anything that is ice related and you start slipping around, micro spikes will literally save your life out there.
So I didn't bring the spikes, and I learned really quickly that they are very essential to a trip up here.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Now, with all the weather again that we've had for the last few days, we've had rain and we've had snow and sleet and all sorts of other stuff. You do need to protect your gear, regardless of what camera manufacturer you're using. So, Stan, what are you using to help keep your stuff working?
It's basically a weather shield. It slips right over your camera.
So it's like a camera cover.
It's just a camera cover, but it is, it's very resilient to the snow, the water, just in case, because you never know. Some lenses, they're not weather sealed.
Yeah.
And if you get hit by some big downpour and some water gets in there,
it's not good.
It's not good.
Moisture's not good with camera gear.
It's not good. Yeah, electronics in general. Having a shield, a weather shield, is, I think, pretty crucial.
So throughout this conversation, we've talked a lot about preparing for an adventure like we have here in the Lofoten Islands. We've talked about the importance of scouting and knowing locations. We've talked about planning your trip accordingly in terms of the number of days you have and where you want to focus your attention. We gave you some ideas on how to use things like Instagram or Google Photos to search for location-based ideas to inspire you and also get real-time updates for the locations that you're visiting so you know what you might to expect as soon as you get off the plane. In addition, we talked about the camera gear we brought out here, third-party gear, and kind of everything in between to help you prepare for an Arctic adventure.
So next up, we got Mr. Colby Brown working the scene and talking about polarizers.
Polarizers, filters, we're gonna pretty much cover everything we can with a variety of different scenes out here in the Lofoten Islands. We're super stoked about it, and we hope you enjoy.